Humanitarian. So essentially what humanitarian means is showing empathy in a way. For example, when natural disasters strike, other countries show concern and aid the victims of the disaster. International law. This means that there is a set of rules and standards that countries generally agree upon. This controls how nations can act toward each other. Nation state. This is just another word for country, in which the citizens are all similar. Like for example, the people in Germany all speak German and share culture and tradition relating to Germany. United Nations. Basically, this is an organization consisting of leaders from countries around the world. They can deal with worldwide problems. This group is crucial because it allows different parts of the world to produce an international harmony. What is government's role in the nation-state? What are some examples of nation-states? The government of a nation-state claims the authority to govern the people who live within its territory. The government of a nation-state also makes and carries out agreements with other nation-states. Some examples are Monaco and Singapore, and China and India. What is the role of diplomacy in international relations? What role does the president have in American diplomacy? The role of diplomacy in international relations is the practice of carrying on formal relationships with the governments of other countries. The role of the president is to meet and discuss important issues in diplomacy. In what ways might nation-states agree to cooperate with each other? Nation-states cooperate by cultural, science, and business exchanges, humanitarian aid, diplomacy, trade, and treaties and agreements. Do you think nations have a responsibility to provide humanitarian aid to the people of other nations? Why or why not? Yes, I think it is vital for countries to aid other nations with food, shelter, natural disasters, and etc. I believe this because some countries are more fortunate than others, and helping each other out strengthens our bond and makes the world stronger as a whole. What is the United Nations? What does the United Nations do? The UN is a group of leaders from several nations. The purposes of the United Nations, according to its charter, are to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, cooperate in solving international economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems. What do the Red Cross and Red Crescent do? Why are non-governmental organizations important? The Red Cross and Red Crescent is a humanitarian aid organization. They do things like blood collection, disaster relief, aid to soldiers and victims of war, and community education and outreach. NGOs are important because they develop society and encourage citizen involvement. Which government official has the power to name ambassadors? Which branch approves such nominations? Which branch hears cases affecting ambassadors? The President has the power to name ambassadors, the legislative branch approves nominations, and the judicial branch hears cases affecting ambassadors. What do you think citizens of the United States gain from relationships with other countries? What do you think citizens in other countries gain from their relationships with us? Not only do they gain materialistic possessions and inventions, but also our principles and beliefs. Citizens gain knowledge of diverse culture, and they can understand how other people live, and vice versa. What does this illustration tell you about the American idea of the relationship between government and the people? People in government are the servants of the people, not the masters of the people. Why do you suppose people in other countries have used ideas from the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights when demonstrating for more freedom from their governments? Other countries agreed with our beliefs on freedom, so they adopted some of the principles to establish in their country. Which of the ideas in these documents do you think are most important and why? I think the most important idea in these documents is that the purpose of government is to protect the people's rights to life, liberty, and property, and to promote the common good, because John Locke established these as our natural rights, and that is something that cannot be taken away from us. Therefore, it is important for it to be protected. Why is it important that countries be able to have a free exchange of ideas? It's important for countries to share their ideas because other nations may have solutions that are more effective and efficient. With ideas from different backgrounds and experiences, it can be easier to resolve a problem. What is a nation-state? A country is also called a nation-state. List some ways in which countries interact with each other. Countries interact with cultural, science, and business exchanges, humanitarian aid, trade, diplomacy, treaties and agreements, and military force. What powers does the U.S. Constitution give the national government to deal with other countries? The Constitution gives the government several powers. For instance, Congress has the power to regulate commerce with other countries. The President is also the commander-in-chief in military forces. The U.S. Supreme Court has the power to hear all cases affecting ambassadors, cases in which the United States is a party, and cases involving a foreign state, its citizens, or subjects. List some ideas in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights that have influenced government in other countries. Number 1. Power comes from the people. Number 2. Government officials are servants, not superiors. Number 3. Everyone is a political equal. Number 4. People give the power and can take it away. Number 5. The government's purpose is to protect our natural rights. Number 6. The Constitution must publicly state our rights. To provide an overall understanding of the lesson, nation-states, aka countries, interact with each other to not only rely on resources, materials, and ideas, but to maintain world peace. To accomplish this, a set of international laws provides the standards on what each country can and cannot do. Sometimes nations will disagree with each other. This will create conflict, which sometimes can lead to war. For the U.S. in specific, we are given certain powers in each branch that are crucial to interact with other countries. Additionally, people like John Locke, Britain, and Baron de Montesquieu, France, have influenced the U.S. with their principles/beliefs, and us in return have influenced other places with our documents. Quick example, all people are political equals. So, in conclusion, the world has places that work together and depend on one another. We influence one another and try our best to make harmony.
So imagine a world parliament. Imagine 193 voices gathering together in New York to deliberate over matters of peace and security. The United Nations was established in 1945 with the signatory of 50 countries for the express purpose of preventing the outbreak of war and averting a world war. The United Nations has many parts to it. It deals, for instance, with matters of economics and social policy. It deals with matters of human rights. It deals with matters of culture. But the most important parts of the UN are the Security Council, which has 5 permanent members who are responsible for controlling its policy. These are France, Britain, the United States, China, and Russia. The other body that is very important is where all the nations meet and come together, and that is the General Assembly. Both the General Assembly and the Security Council pass what are called resolutions to make policy for the world. The UN has been responsible for eradicating polio in Africa, for instance, of dealing with problems of debt or problems of other diseases spreading. The UN has been very important in making sure that human rights are observed. The most famous document is the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, which has been ratified and kept by many countries. The UN, precisely because it's so complex, is determined to make sure that everything is done towards a big picture of peace and trying to make sure that humanity attains the primary purpose of what it says, that we believe. We believe in a better future.
Hello viewers, in this video we will understand nation-state system, which we often use to hear in the international paradigm. So here we go. First of all, we will understand that what do we mean by the word nation. Then we will differentiate between our nation and our nation state. and then we will move towards understanding nation-state system, and we will also discuss that how this nation-state system evolved. So first of all, what is the difference between a nation and a nation-state? A large body of people united by common history, culture, identity, or language inhabiting a particular state or territory is known as a nation, whereas a nation-state has defined territory with a sovereign government with population sharing a common culture, history, and language. This is the difference between a nation and a nation-state. From both these definitions, we must understand that a nation can be called a nation-state only when it has defined territory, sovereign government with population sharing common culture, history, and language. Well, now nation-state system. Basically, it is a pattern of political life in which people are separately organized into sovereign states and interact with one another. For example, in the contemporary world, people are divided into different countries and are interconnected with each other. Modern nation-state system. Nation-state system is also called as the modern nation-state system because it is a recent phenomenon where each state is supposed to protect its citizens from all types of threats. For ensuring the protection of their citizens, states use different methods like diplomacy and wars. Where has this come from? Now we will see the history of nation-state system, that from where this system evolved. Evolution of nation-state system. Prior to 5th century, there was no concept of nation-states in the world. People identified themselves with their region or feudal lord. Since then, feudalism was not only an economic system but also was a political system.
Okay, what is international law? Well, these are the rules and principles that govern the conduct between two separate nations or citizens or individuals from separate or different nations. Okay, so just like domestic law, which consists of statutes, rules, regulations, etc., international law is a set of rules. Now, it could either be a common understanding or agreement entered into between two nations, or it could be one nation's law that applies in a given situation where two nations are interacting, or again, the citizens of two different nations are interacting. So generally it requires that both nations adhere to these principles because, again, it's not germane or it's not applicable to just one nation unless you accept the law of another nation as governing a particular transaction that involves these two foreign individuals or two foreign businesses or two foreign nations interacting or doing business together. Now, the United States looks at international law or the principles governing international relations or international business transactions as part of the U.S. law. That is, it should be accepted and adhered to in accordance with any level of agreement or assent by the parties or by the nations. So with that in mind, international law is very important for the general application of law or the rule of law throughout the world. That is, that countries and citizens of those countries will respect these common rules in interacting. And this is, again, incredibly important in an increasingly globalized world where international business is far more prevalent than it has ever been, particularly the trade of goods and intellectual property across boundaries. So with that way, again, the international law supplies the rule of law, again, between nations and adds certainty and comfort for individuals in interacting in the international environment.